Welcome to another lecture on power electronics. In last lecture, we discussed about base and gate drive circuits, and we also discussed about various methods of triggering an SCR. In last lecture, we found that pulse gate triggering is one of the best methods of triggering an SCR. So how to generate these control pulses or firing pulses for triggering an SCR? Let us try to understand a very simple method of generating the firing pulses or control pulses for the firing of an SCR. For this purpose, we use an we use a method for the generation of control pulses using unijunction transistor. Junction transistor. This is also called UJT. What is a unijunction transistor? A unijunction transistor, unlike a bipolar junction transistor, has only one junction. We know that a BJT, that's bipolar junction transistor, has two junctions. Whereas unijunction transistor, on the other hand, has only one PN junction. That's why it's called unijunction transistor. And it is used for the generation of control pulses or pulses with high rise time. Okay. It's also used as a relaxation oscillator, and as a relaxation oscillator also, it is again used for the generation of control pulses. Now, in its simple form, UJT looks like this. This is the structure of UJT. So, in its simple form, UJT comprises of N-type material, N-type base, which is lightly doped base. So this is N-type base, and it is lightly doped. And then we have on this N-type base, a P-type material is diffused somewhere here. So this is P-type material, and this P-type material is heavily doped. Heavily doped. So it has got three terminals. You can see base B1, base B2, and this is called emitter E. So now we can see this as this N-type material is lightly doped, it has a very large resistance. The resistivity or the resistance of this N-type base material is very, very high. Okay, it is around 4 to 10 kilo ohms. If you measure the resistance between terminals base B1 and B2, when the UJT is in the off state, its resistance is as high as 4 to 10 kilo ohms. Now, as far as this P material is concerned, P, which is diffused on the N-type base, it is closer to B2 than to B1. Therefore, if you measure the resistance between E and B2, it is small, whereas the resistance between E and B1, since it covers most of the area, this resistance is large. And there is only one junction. This is P-type material, this is N-type material, and this is one P-N junction. Only one junction is there. That is why it's called a unijunction transistor. Fine. Now, if I draw it again, this is base B2, base terminal B2, this is base terminal B1. This is your P-type material, this is N-type material, this is N, this is P, and this is emitter terminal E. So you can see, if you show the resistances, this is resistance between this emitter and base B2. Let us call this RB2. And this is resistance between this emitter and base B1. Let us call this RB1. Now this RB1 is greater than RB2. And the total resistance between the two terminals, B1 and B2, That is called inter-base resistance. I will write here, inter-base resistance. This RBB is sum of two internal resistances, small RB1 and RB2. This RB1 plus RB2, and I have already told you that it is very high, 4 to 10 kilo ohms when the UJT is in the off state. Okay, so we can draw the equivalent circuit diagram of UJT like this. Equivalent circuit. Its equivalent circuit will be like this. Equivalent circuit is like this. This is resistance RB2. This is resistance RB1. This is say point A, and you have a PN junction here. You can show that PN junction with the help of this diode. So this is PN junction, and this is your emitter E. This is base terminal B1. This is base terminal B2. So this is the equivalent circuit diagram of a UJT. So you can see this is base terminal B1, this is base terminal B2. Between B1 and emitter there is RB1, so the RB1, and between emitter and base 2 there is another resistance RB2, and then you have a PN junction here that can be shown by this PN junction diode equivalently. So these are the three terminals of UJT, B1, B2 and emitter. Now let us do one thing, let us bias this UJT, apply a fixed voltage on this side. The applied voltage is plus minus VBB. It's called interbase voltage, voltage applied between the two bases. Now because of this voltage, a small current of the order of a few milliamperes will flow like this. This will be the current flowing, okay? And this current will be IB is equal to VBB, VBB by RB1 plus RB2. Sum of two resistances, or we can say it is VBB by RBB, interbase resistance, where the RBB is RB1 plus RB2. Now because of the flow of this current IB, which is flowing in series with these resistances, a voltage drop will be produced at point A. A voltage will be dropped across resistance RB1. We are interested in finding that voltage, and that voltage will represent as VA. Now this VA will be given by, it is the product of current and resistance. It is IB into RB1. Now since IB is this, VBB by RB1 plus RB2, so multiplied by RB1. So I can again write that the voltage between voltage drop across this resistance, that is VA, is equal to RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2 into VBB. This can also be written as eta VBB. Eta VBB, where eta, let me write it like this, where eta is the voltage divider ratio. It is RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2, and it is voltage divider ratio. I am writing here it is voltage divider ratio. And this eta is also called intrinsic standoff ratio. This is the name given to this eta, intrinsic standoff ratio. The value of this eta depends upon, it varies from UJT to UJT. It depends upon the type of material that we are using and how far away this, the emitter is from B2 and B1. And if you see the data sheets of various UJTs available in the market, the range of this eta is 0.51 to 0.81. This is the range of this intrinsic standoff ratio. What is basically this intrinsic standoff ratio? It is RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2, or RB1 divided by RBB. It's a voltage divider ratio, and it determines how much voltage will appear across this internal resistance RB1. higher this ratio, more will be the voltage drop here. Smaller this ratio, smaller will be the voltage across resistance or V1. Okay. So therefore, we can say that voltage at this point or voltage across this resistance RB1, VA is equal to eta VBB. Okay. Symbolically, now this UJT can be symbolically represented like this. Its symbolic representation is like this. Symbolic representation. Symbolically, it is like this. You have terminals B2, B1, and this is emitter. And an arrow is shown like this. Arrow is shown inclined towards B1. Because you will see very soon that when UJT goes into conduction, current flows from E to B1. It does not flow from E to B2, it flows from E to B1. Okay, so this is the symbolic representation of UJT. So now we have seen that when UJT is biased, voltage, DC voltage is applied between base B1 and B2, it causes voltage drop across this resistance RB1, which is called VA. That is voltage at point A. It is eta times VBB. Now let us do one thing. Let us apply another voltage source here between emitter and base B1. Let us call this voltage as VEE. And so therefore, the voltage between E and B1 is VE. It is called emitter voltage, VE. Earlier, we had only one voltage source that caused a voltage at point A given by eta into VBB. Now we have connected another source between emitter E and base B1. Now two cases will be there. We'll discuss two cases. Case A, VE is less than VA. Now this VE you can make variable, you can change it. Initially, let us say in case A, this VE, the applied voltage, emitter voltage is less than VA. So that means anode voltage is less than cathode voltage. When that is the case, this PN junction diode, diode D, is reverse biased. So it will be reverse biased. And because of that, the UJT will remain in the off state except for very small reverse leakage current. Negligibly small reverse leakage current will flow. Reverse leakage current will flow through the UJT. Very, very small reverse leakage current will flow through there. So it is virtually in the off state. That is case A. Case B is the emitter voltage is greater than voltage at point A. This voltage is greater than voltage across voltage across RB1. That is VE is greater than VA. In that case, we can say anode voltage is more than cathode voltage. So this PN junction is forward biased. So this means D is forward biased. Forward biased. And when D is forward biased, there is the flow of current. If you again go back to the layer diagram, this is your N-type material and this is P. So this is B2, this is B1. So when when this PN junction is forward biased, actually P-type material injects holes. So there is the injection of holes from P material into the N material, N base. Now since N base is lightly doped, okay, it's a lightly doped base, so these holes will have a large lifetime, okay. And since there is a voltage source between B1 and B2, the positive potential of this voltage source will repel holes. So holes cannot go up, they will be repelled by this positive potential. And this negative potential will attract the holes. So these holes will start moving from emitter E to base B1, okay. So they will move from emitter E to base B1. So as soon as holes are injected into this N-type base, they move downwards. They travel like this and they form a conducting channel. Okay. And these holes form a conducting channel and they increase the carrier concentration and flow of charge. And when there is flow of charge, there is flow of holes from emitter E to base B1, there will be reverse injection of electrons. So this follows the current, and that current is called emitter current. So an emitter current, IE, I will note there, emitter current IE will start flowing. And because of the movement of holes from emitter E to base B1, this area between emitter E and base B1 will be flooded with majority charged carriers. And as a result of that, the resistance, internal resistance RB1, it will decrease. Initially, this RB1 was of the order of kilo ohms. Now it will start falling. As the charge carriers increase in this area and base, its resistance automatically decreases. More number of charge carriers means less resistance. So this RB1 decreases. When this RB1 decreases, this voltage VA also decreases, because what is this VA? VA is eta times VBB, and this eta depends upon RB1. Eta is RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2, and when RB1 decreases because of the flow of holes, flow of charge carriers, RB1 drastically decreases, eta also decreases, and because of decrease of eta, VA also decreases. So VA decreases, VA is fixed, VE is fixed, so it becomes more forward biased. Earlier we had assumed that VE is more than VA. Now since VA further decreases, so VE becomes much larger than VA, so forward bias across the diode further increases. That causes further injection of holes and more flow of current. And when there is more flow of current, this RB1 further decreases. That further increases the voltage, this forward bias across the diode, and more current. So the current goes on increasing till the device is fully turned on. And then the current, when the device is fully turned on, this RB1 is very nearly equal to 0. And then a very large current will flow, and to limit the magnitude of that current, you may have to put some extra resistance to limit the magnitude of that current. So this explains the principle of operation of a UJT, how it goes into conduction. So I repeat, initially we put a voltage, we connect a voltage, DC voltage source, interbase voltage source, VBB between B2 and B1. That causes flow of current, and because of that current, there is a voltage drop across this RB1, that is called VA, and that is given by intrinsic standoff ratio multiplied by VBB. And this intrinsic standoff ratio is RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2. Then we connect another variable voltage source between emitter and base B1, and two cases have been considered. Case A, this VE is less than VA. When VE is less than VA, diode is, or PN junction is reverse biased, and device is in the off state. Only a very small, negligibly small reverse leakage current will flow. So device is virtually in the off state. Second case is VE, we increase so that VE becomes greater than VA. In that case, this PN junction diode is forward biased, and there is injection of holes from emitter to this N-type material, N-type base. These holes are repelled from B2 and they are attracted by B1 because of the polarity of this voltage, and they move from emitter E to base B1, and they form a conducting channel. And as a result of that, this internal resistance RB1 decreases. When RB1 decreases, this voltage VA decreases because eta decreases. And because of decrease in VA, VE becomes more than VA, more forward bias is there, more injection of holes is there, and more injection of holes means RB1 further decreases. So that keeps on increasing the emitter current till the device goes completely in the on state. And when the device or UJT is in complete on state, the full emitter current will flow, whose magnitude can be limited by an external resistance not shown here. And at that time, this RB1 nearly becomes equal to 0. When UJT is in the off state, RB1 is very high, of the order of kilo ohms. And when UJT goes into conduction by making VE greater than VA, RB1 nearly falls to equal to 0. So this explains the operating principle of a UJT. Now let us draw the VI characteristics of UJT. VE versus IE, static emitter characteristics of UJT. So the characteristics will look like this. This is my emitter current IE. It will be, of course, of the order of milliamperes. UJT current, the emitter current, when it even if it goes into conduction, it is of the order of a few milliamperes only. And this is VE, emitter voltage in volts. So the characteristics will look like this. This is, say, point O. This is point P. Let me first draw it completely. This is V, point V. Okay, now this current is IEO, reverse leakage current. I will write reverse leakage current, very small reverse leakage current. This point is V. Now this area between this and this, this is called cutoff region. I will show it like this. It is called cutoff region between O and P, cutoff region. The region between P and V, this is your V. This region, it is negative resistance region. Negative resistance region. And this region towards this, it is called saturation region. Saturation region. So there are three operating characteristics or operating regions of VI characteristics of UJT. Cutoff region between O and P, negative resistance region between P and V, and beyond V, saturation region. I will explain the meaning of these regions. Now the current at point P, that is, let us call that the voltage at point P, let's call that voltage as at VP, and the corresponding current I call IP. Similarly, the voltage at point V, I call that VV, and the corresponding current I call IV. Okay, so what happens? You can perform this experiment in the lab. In fact, we make students obtain these characteristics in the lab. We have an experimental setup in our power electronics lab where these characteristics are obtained, and this is how the characteristics are obtained. This is emitter. We put a small milliammeter in series. Then this is your UJT. I will show the symbolic representation of UJT. This is B1, this is B2, and a small resistance is capital RB1 is placed here. Between B1 and B2, we have another voltage, VBB, interbase voltage. And we put a voltmeter. This voltmeter reads emitter voltage, this ammeter here reads emitter current. It gives the reading of emitter current. What we do initially, we bias, we fix this voltage. Suppose we fix this VBB as 10 volts, as an example. Because of that, there is a VA, the voltage at point A, that is eta VBB. Depending upon what is the eta of UJT you have used, certain voltage will be there across internal resistance RB1, which I am not showing here. I am showing the symbolic representation, not actual circuit diagram. Then we apply an external voltage, a variable voltage VEE between emitter and base B1. And then we slowly increase this. Okay, initially this is 0, then this VEE is 0, current is 0, current is 0, and then current is in fact negative. When you increase this, but if VE is less than VA, your diode is, or PN junction is reverse biased, and it is in the off state, a negligibly small reverse leakage current will flow, and that reverse leakage current I have represented by IEO. It's of the order of a few microamperes only. It is so small that your milliammeter, this ammeter, will not be able to record this. For that purpose, you have to put a microammeter here, and this reverse leakage current is very, very small. Okay, it is negative but negligibly small. You can see As you increase the applied voltage, this reverse leakage, this is the reverse leakage current. It is of the order of a few microamperes only. It's very, very small. You can see it is very, very small. Then as we increase the applied voltage, we keep on increasing the applied voltage, then this reverse leakage current, it becomes positive. You can see this is the reverse leakage current here, this is the reverse leakage current here, but the device is still in the off state till you reach point P. P is called peak point. A name is given to this point P, it is called peak point. The voltage at peak point is called peak point voltage and the corresponding current is called peak point current. So what is the voltage at peak point? It is peak point voltage Vp and the corresponding current is peak point current Ip. This Ip is still in microampere range. Device is still in the off state. So what happens from this O to P? Your device is conducting negligibly small current of the order of microampere. So it is in the off state, or we say it is in the cutoff state. That's why this region between O and P, I have called this region as cutoff region because the UJT is in the off state. It is conducting only negligibly small amount of reverse leakage current of the order of a few microamperes. So this region is called cutoff region. What happens at P, at peak point? Your peak point voltage becomes greater than cut-in voltage of diode and eta VBB. If you see the equivalent circuit, let me draw the equivalent circuit again. This is your diode, PN junction. This is point A. This is RB1. This is RB2. This is VBB. And this is VE, variable voltage VE. This is VE. And this is current IE. This VE, this is VE. At peak point, when you go on increasing the voltage, see, you go on increasing the voltage. This is how you increase the voltage. So I will repeat. At peak point, P, the applied voltage is Vp. So from 0 to P, we are increasing the applied voltage, but current is very, very small. It is of the order of a few microamperes. So device is in the cutoff state. So this region from O to P is called cutoff region. At P, the voltage across the device is peak point voltage Vp and the corresponding current is peak point current Ip. So this Vp becomes greater than or equal to cut-in voltage of diode plus Va. Because we have a PN junction diode, its cut-in voltage is 0.4 to 0.7 volt. So this voltage has to be overcome, and then this voltage drop across this internal resistance is Va. So when VE is greater than or equal to this cut-in voltage and Va, it is greater than or equal to Vd plus Va. This emitter potential becomes more positive than this potential. That is, anode becomes positive. Anode potential is more than cathode potential, and this PN junction is forward biased and conduction starts. So I can write V more than Vd plus, what is Va by the way? Va is eta VBB. Eta is intrinsic standoff ratio. It is RB1 divided by RB1 plus RB2. So at peak point, what happens? The peak point voltage is peak point voltage, and this peak point voltage becomes equal to Vd plus Va. That is, it becomes equal to or greater than Vd plus eta VBB. And we know when Vp is greater than Vd plus eta VPP, that means this anode is this VE is more than Va. That means this PN junction is forward biased. And then when this PN junction is forward biased, there is injection of holes from P to N. And these holes, when they are injected here, they are attracted, they move towards the bottom. Okay? They move towards B1. And when they move towards B1, they form a conducting channel. And because of this conducting channel, what happens? The carrier concentration from E to B1 increases. So when carrier concentration increases, what will happen to internal resistance? Obviously, internal resistance decreases. When there are less carriers, resistance is high. And when carrier concentration, conducting channel is formed, holes are injected and those holes are flooded in this region, so obviously this internal resistance decreases. And when this internal resistance decreases, we know that this internal resistance decrease means VA decreases, because VA is equal to eta VBB. And this eta depends upon internal resistance. As internal resistance RB1 decreases, eta decreases. And because of decrease in eta, VA decreases. So since VA decreases, VE becomes more positive than VA. So the forward bias across this PN junction further increases. That causes more injection of holes and more flow of current. And more injection of holes means this RB1 further decreases and current further increases. And further decrease of RB1 causes further decrease in VA, more forward bias, and this goes on. So that means beyond point P, that is peak point, what happens? The current drastically increases. You can see the current increases, emitter current. And what happens to the voltage across the device? Since RB1 is continuously decreasing, so the voltage drop across this RB1 decreases. The voltage drop across the device decreases, sharply decreases, till the device reaches a point which is called V. V is called valley point. The voltage at valley point is called valley point voltage VV, and the corresponding current is called valley point current. So this is the operating current of UJT. So we can now say that at the valley point, the UJT has gone into conduction. So therefore, the region from P to V, it shows negative resistance characteristics, because current from P to V, current, you can see current increases, but resistance decreases, or voltage drop across the device decreases. And when current increases, voltage drop decreases, means this internal resistance is decreasing. So it is a negative resistance region. In fact, it is the region from off state to on state. From O to P, device is in the off state, and from P to V, it is a transient state. The device goes from off to on state. So it is a transient state from off state to on state, and during this transient state, your UJT shows negative resistance characteristics. So region from P to V is negative resistance region, and in this region, the emitter current increases sharply and the voltage drop across the device sharply decreases. What about beyond V? Beyond V, now since device has gone into conduction, this RB1 almost disappears, because this channel, this N layer, or this UJT is flooded with the charge carriers and large current flows. So therefore, this internal resistance becomes nearly equal to zero. RB1 becomes nearly equal to zero. And since this internal resistance becomes nearly equal to zero, a negligibly small voltage drop will be there. So therefore, beyond this valley point, if you further increase this emitter voltage, applied voltage here, the current through the device will go on increasing. But what will happen to voltage drop? Voltage drop across the device will almost remain constant, because the device or UJT has gone into saturation. It has gone completely in the on state. That's why beyond this valley point, beyond this point V, the region becomes the saturation region. So therefore, I can summarize the operation of UJT with the help of its VI characteristics, static emitter characteristics. Initially, when VE is less, okay, it is VE, applied voltage is less than peak point voltage. You can see from O to P, applied voltage is less than peak point voltage. This PN junction remains reverse biased, because this VE is less than VA, and negligibly small leakage current of the order of a few microamperes flows, and the UJT is in the blocking state, in the off state, or in the cutoff state. So therefore, the region from O to P, you can see OP region, it's called cutoff region, because in this region, your UJT is in the cutoff state, off state. What happens at point P? P is called peak point. The peak point voltage becomes greater than or equal to cut-in voltage of diode plus VA. So that is, it becomes greater than or equal to VD plus eta VBB. Since this voltage becomes greater than this, it forward biases the PN junction diode. And because of this forward bias, there is injection of holes. I can show from this diagram, there is injection of holes. And these holes, since N layer is lightly doped and P layer is heavily doped, there is large injection of holes, and these holes in the N region have got longer lifetime, because N layer is lightly doped. And these holes move downwards. They move from emitter to base B1, and they form emitter current. And because of flooding of these holes, charge carriers in this N region, the internal resistance RB1 decreases. As RB1 decreases, VA decreases. Because of decrease of VA, this forward bias across PN junction further increases. It injects more and more charge carriers. So that means current goes on increasing, but the resistance, internal resistance, goes on decreasing. In other words, current through the device goes on increasing, and the voltage drop across the device, across this resistance, goes on decreasing. So that is why from P to V, your UJT shows negative resistance characteristic. You can show from P to V, current increases, but voltage drop sharply decreases till you reach point V, which is called valley point. So the region from P to V is called negative resistance region. It is the transient region, transient state. When the UJT goes from off state to on state, it shows that state. So it is the negative resistance region. What happens beyond negative, this valley point? Your UJT is now completely in the on state. If the emitter current or the device current increases, voltage drop across device hardly increases. It remains almost constant because the device has now completely gone into the on state. So this explains the operation of UJT with the help of its VEIE static emitter characteristics. These characteristics can be obtained in the laboratory. We already have an experimental setup in our laboratory where you can perform this experiment. You can obtain these VEIE or VI characteristics of UJT. Now, where does this UJT find its applications? This UJT can be used as a firing agent, as a firing circuit for the firing of thyristors, SCRs and triacs. We can use this UJT as a relaxation oscillator. As a relaxation oscillator, it generates a train of control pulses or firing pulses, which can be used for firing of SCRs and triacs. So let us now discuss UJT relaxation oscillator. Relaxation oscillator. UJT relaxation oscillator circuit diagram is like this. You can understand it with the help of this circuit diagram. This is internal resistance RB1. This is internal resistance RB2. This is base B1. Base B1 and base terminal B1. This is base terminal B2. This is emitter terminal E. And then, see, this is your UJT. यहाँ से यहाँ तक ये आपका UJT. This is your UJT. This is the equivalent diagram of your UJT, equivalent circuit diagram. So I will note down that this is your UJT. Then what we do, externally we put another resistance, capital RB1. Small RB1 means internal resistance between base B1 and emitter E. Between emitter E and base B1. RB1. RB2 is the internal resistance between emitter and base B2. And what is capital RB1? It is the external resistance that we put in the circuit. Similarly, we put another external resistance, capital RB2, at base B2. And then this is your DC power supply. It is fixed. Let us call this VS, source voltage, DC source voltage. Okay. Then we don't connect another voltage source here. We connect another voltage source between emitter and base B1 if you want to obtain VI characteristics of UJT. What in this case, if you want to use UJT as a relaxation oscillator between emitter E and base B1, what you do? You connect a capacitor like this. Have a capacitor like this, C. The voltage across capacitor is VC. And here you connect a variable resistor, R. It is a variable resistance. So this is your UJT. This is the equivalent circuit diagram of your UJT. And with this UJT, you connect some external elements. Like you connect DC voltage source VS, you connect R, you connect C. R is variable resistance, C is fixed capacitance. You connect external resistance RB1, RB2, and this becomes your complete circuit. And this is your UJT relaxation oscillator. So if you draw it, if you show it with the help of symbolic representation, you replace this UJT by its symbolic diagram, it becomes like this. See, this is emitter, this is base B2, this is base B1, okay. Now this is RB1, and here capital RB1, this is RB2. You have a capacitor here whose voltage is VC, and you have a variable resistor R, and you connect the voltage source here, a fixed voltage source. It is same as this. You can show it on this side or on this side. It's one and the same thing. And this becomes your UJT relaxation oscillator. What is this? This is your UJT. Within circle I will show. This is your UJT. And these are the external circuit elements to make it work as a relaxation oscillator. Let us see how it works as a relaxation oscillator and how it generates the firing pulses for the triggering of thyristor. What happens is that, let's come to this diagram. Initially, when the UJT is in the off state, the voltage is applied here, DC voltage, and because of this, a charging current flows through R and through C like this. I'm showing dotted line. This is charging current. Because your R and C are directly connected across the source, you can see from this diagram also, R and C are directly connected across DC source. Or in this diagram also, it is clearly shown that R and C are connected directly across source, and because of this, a charging current will flow. Now that this charging current will charge your capacitors. The rate at which this capacitor is charged depends upon the time constant RC. Tau 1, let us call this tau 1, is equal to R into C, and it is RC time constant. And this RC time constant will determine the rate at which this capacitor voltage rises, at which the capacitor is charged. So what happens when the capacitor is charged? Because of this charging current, the VC, capacitor voltage, goes on increasing. Now this VC acts as your DC source for your UJT. Now since VC goes on increasing, capacitor voltage, and as soon as this VC reaches peak point voltage, and you know what is peak point voltage. Peak point voltage is that voltage when capacitor voltage VC becomes equal to VP. It of course becomes greater than or equal to VD plus eta Vs. So therefore, when the capacitor charges and its voltage starts increasing, a stage reaches when this capacitor voltage becomes equal to peak point voltage. And from the graph, you have seen what happens at peak point voltage. This peak point voltage is greater than or equal to cut-in voltage of this diode plus this voltage. So it forward biases this diode. And because of forward bias of diode, the device goes into conduction. There is injection, then you know what is the process. There is injection of holes. The device goes from on state to off state to on state, and current flows like this. It flows from emitter to base B1. And internal resistance RB1, when the device goes into conduction, it becomes almost zero. The magnitude of current will be then limited by this external resistance RB1. And therefore, this capacitor discharges through this RB1. And while discharging through this RB1, it produces a voltage drop across this RB1, and that voltage drop can be treated as a control pulse or firing pulse and can be used for the firing of thyristor. Let us try to understand it with the help of graph. This is time axis, and this is the capacitor voltage VC. Now, because of this DC charging current from the DC source, capacitor starts charging, and the voltage across capacitor starts rising at a rate determined by this time constant RC. Let us suppose this is the rate of charging of capacitor. Capacitor charges and it reaches this voltage. This is peak point voltage, VP. As soon as capacitor voltage reaches peak point voltage, what will happen? You know, when the applied voltage is equal to peak point voltage, UJT goes into conduction. We have already understood that. So UJT goes into conduction, and then when UJT goes into conduction, capacitor discharges. Okay, I can show here also. When UJT goes into conduction, capacitor discharges. It discharges through this RB1. So when capacitor discharges, the voltage across it decreases. The rate at which this voltage across capacitor decreases, that depends upon RB1 into C. Tau 2 is equal to RB1 into C. This is the rate. R into C will determine the rate of charging of capacitor, and RB1 into C will determine the rate of discharge of capacitor. So what will happen? The capacitor, when UJT goes into conduction, capacitor discharges through this external resistance RB1, so it discharges. I can show it discharges. When capacitor discharges, its voltage decreases, and finally it reaches the valley point voltage. This is valley point voltage, for example, VV. And then it further tries to decrease. Its voltage tries to go below valley point voltage. As the capacitor voltage goes below valley point voltage, the UJT again goes off. Okay, UJT is again in the off state. And when it is in the off state, then the process again repeats. Then this capacitor again starts charging because of this DC source. It again charges. I can show it. It again charges. And as soon as this voltage again reaches equal to peak point voltage, then UJT again goes into conduction and it discharges. And again the voltage reaches valley point voltage. And at valley point voltage, the device again turns off and the process is repeated. Then it again charges, again discharges, then it again charges, again discharges, and so on. So this charging and discharging continues as long as circuit is working. Now, in the next graph, I will show you the control pulses. The control pulse is obtained across this resistance. Let us call the control voltage VG. Now, VG is same as voltage across RB1. In fact, when the capacitor discharges, initially when capacitor charges and voltage reaches peak point voltage, UJT goes into conduction and capacitor discharges like this and emitter current flows. When emitter current flows, that flows through RB1 and it causes a voltage drop, VRB1, across this external resistance, and that can be used as a firing pulse. How that can be used as a firing pulse? Let me show you. I am now showing second graph, VG, that is gate voltage or firing pulse across this external resistance, RB1. You can now see from this point to this point, your capacitor is discharging. Capacitor is discharging means UJT has gone into conduction and emitter current flows like this. When emitter current flows, your capacitor is discharging at a rate given by RB into C. And this is the rate at which capacitor discharges. And this voltage gets applied. When your UJT goes into conduction, this RB1 directly gets connected across capacitor. And whatever is the voltage of capacitor, that gets applied across this RB1. And what is the voltage across capacitor? It is like this. So this voltage gets applied across RB1. So you can see it acts as a firing pulse. Does it look like a firing pulse? A voltage pulse like this. So therefore you get one voltage pulse across this external resistance RB1. And then as the applied voltage tends to become as the voltage across capacitor tends to become less than valley point voltage, it's gone. Because capacitor has now completely discharged and you have obtained a voltage pulse across RB1 and capacitor has almost completely discharged, and then the process of charging again starts. This DC supply again charges the capacitor at the same rate, R into C. And as soon as the voltage across capacitor again reaches peak point voltage, the UJT again goes into conduction, and when UJT conducts, this RB1 receives the voltage pulse, voltage across VC. So again you receive another voltage pulse. This is second voltage pulse, which you receive across RB1. And then the process repeats. You receive third voltage pulse here. This is the third voltage pulse. You receive fourth voltage pulse here. And so on. You receive a train of firing pulses. So this is the width of voltage pulse, TG. TG is the width of voltage pulse. And this TG is given by RB1 into C. It is the product of RB1 and C. You can see this TG because capacitor discharges through RB1 And the rate at which the capacitor discharges, it is decided by this time constant, RB1 into C. And so therefore RB1 into C determines the rate of discharge of capacitor, and therefore it determines the width of the control pulse, Tg. So Tg is the width of control pulse, width of firing pulse, RB. And if you want the width of firing pulse to be equal to turn on time of the thyristor, which you want to trigger, so you can adjust the width of control pulse by adjusting the value of capacitance and this RB1. And if capacitance is fixed, you can increase the value of RB1 to obtain large width of pulse, so that the width of control pulse is greater than or equal to turn on time of the thyristor, which you want to trigger with the help of this control pulse. This is time period T, this is 2T, this is 3T. Now, therefore, you obtain a train of firing pulses across this external resistance RB1. Therefore, this, you can see this UJT acts as a relaxation oscillator. As a relaxation oscillator, it generates a train of firing pulses that you can use for the triggering of your thyristor. Between the occurrence of two pulses, that is between this and this, UJT relaxes. This is called relaxation time. Relaxation time. You see, first control firing pulse is obtained here, then from here to here, there is no firing pulse. This is called relaxation time. Then another firing pulse is obtained here, then there is again a relaxation time. Then another firing pulse, again relaxation time. So between the occurrence of two firing pulses, UJT relaxes. There is, this time is called relaxation time. That's why it's called relaxation oscillator. Fine. Now this T, this time period T, from here to here, this is the time period T. It is 1 by F. It is given by RC ln of 1 by 1 minus eta. Eta is intrinsic standoff ratio. This T is also given by RC log of Vs minus Vp. What is your peak point voltage? Peak point voltage is Vd plus eta Vs. We already know. So substituting it here, so therefore you get T is equal to RC log of Vs divided by Vs times 1 minus eta minus Vd minus Vd. So this is the mathematical expression for this time period T. Now what will be the value of this R? This R has a range of value. It can be 3 kilo ohms to 3 mega ohms. It has a lower limit. This is lower limit. And it has an upper limit. This is its upper limit. How do we decide what should be the lower limit of this variable resistance and what should be its upper limit? Its lower limit and upper limit are decided by certain considerations. The consideration is, let me discuss that with you. See, when UJT is in the off state, when relaxation oscillator is in the off state, this capacitor charges like this. Charging current flows like this. And as soon as this, as soon as this capacitor voltage becomes equal to peak point voltage, UJT triggers. It goes into conduction, and we obtain a firing pulse across RB1. Okay. Now, therefore, we can say for certain triggering of UJT, if you want that UJT should certainly trigger, okay, this capacitor voltage should be greater than peak point voltage. When the capacitor voltage is greater than peak point voltage, then you are certain that the UJT has triggered. See, when capacitor is charging, see, it is charging like this. If the value of resistance is very, very high, then there may be maximum drop here, and the voltage across this capacitor will be very, very small, and this capacitor voltage may never reach peak point voltage. If you keep this R very, very high, if this R is very high, say it is 10 mega ohms, 20 mega ohms, this capacitor will never reach its peak point voltage. So when this capacitor voltage will never reach its peak point voltage, UJT will never fire. So therefore, there should be an upper limit for this resistance. And that upper limit can be determined if we ascertain that the capacitor voltage reaches peak point voltage, or it is greater than peak point voltage. So that's what I have written. For certain triggering of UJT, VC should be greater than peak point voltage. So what is this VC when this capacitor is charging? This VC is the capacitor voltage is Vs minus Ip into R, because when capacitor voltage reaches peak point, the voltage is peak point voltage, and the current is when capacitor voltage is equal to peak point voltage, the current is peak point current. So therefore, this VC is this applied voltage minus this drop. What is applied voltage? Vs minus what is this drop? This is peak point current into resistance. So this voltage minus this drop is your capacitor voltage, and it should be greater than or equal to peak point voltage. This will give you the upper limit of R. So R should be, from this equation, less than or equal to Vp plus Vp minus Vs by Ip. So this sets the upper limit of resistance, upper limit of R. So normally, when you purchase a UJT from the market, from the data sheet of UJT, you know these parameters are given. This Vs applied voltage is generally of this range, 10 to 35 volts in practical circuits. You know what is your applied voltage, what is the DC source voltage. You already know. DC source voltage is determined by you, and it should be within this range. So you know Vs, Vp is the peak point voltage, and Ip is the peak point current. You can find that from the data sheet of your UJT. And if data sheet is not available, then you can perform the experiment on the UJT, same experiment through which we have obtained VI characteristics of UJT. And from those VI characteristics, you can find what is the peak point voltage, peak point current. Because in those characteristics, clearly you have seen peak point voltage and peak point current. By obtaining the VI characteristics of UJT, you can find its peak point voltage and peak point current. And if you don't want to perform experiment, you then just search on the internet, put the serial number of UJT, and it will give you the data sheet, the specifications of UJT. So UJT has certain peak point voltage, peak point current, and you already know this peak point voltage and peak point current from data sheet. Substitute here, so this will give you the upper limit of R. That's what I have already told you. Upper limit is around 3 mega ohms, or it can be less than this 3 mega ohms. It depends upon the circuit. Okay, so you will get the upper limit of this resistance. How to get the lower limit of resistance? The lower limit is, say if this R is very, very small, then no doubt VC will always reach peak point voltage. It will fire your UJT. But when UJT is fired, right, this capacitor discharges here. When it discharges, the capacitor voltage should go to valley point voltage. And when capacitor voltage reaches, you have seen from the graph right now, there's a few moments that when the capacitor voltage reaches valley point voltage, it turns off. The UJT turns off, and then the process of charging and discharging again starts. So therefore, for certain turning off of UJT, the capacitor voltage should go below valley point voltage. I will write here. For certain turning off of UJT, the capacitor voltage should go below valley point voltage. Only when capacitor, when UJT goes into conduction, capacitor discharges. And when capacitor voltage becomes less than valley point voltage, then your UJT relaxation oscillator is off, and then the charging phenomenon again starts. It again charges, and when it charges, it reaches VC reaches peak point voltage and again fires, and the process continues. But if VC when this capacitor discharges, and if this capacitor voltage is not less than value point voltage, it will never turn off. Your UJT will never turn off. It will remain in the on state. It will take a very long time for UJT to turn off. Okay, so for certain turning off of UJT, capacitor voltage should be less than VV. What is this capacitor voltage? It is again applied voltage minus this drop. So this is Vs minus IV into R. What is the current at value point voltage? This is value point current. That's why I have written IV into R should be less than value point voltage. So this will give you the lower limit of R. So R should be greater than or equal to Vs minus Vv by IV. So this sets the lower limit of R. Lower limit of R. Again, if you Vs, you know what is the applied voltage. You have decided applied voltage. How to find value point voltage and value point current? Again, if data sheet is not available, you can go to laboratory, you can obtain its VI characteristics, and while obtaining VI characteristics of UJT, it is very easy to obtain VI characteristics. You can find its value voltage, value point voltage and value point current. Or if data sheet is available to you, go to the data sheet, and on the data sheet, value point voltage VV and value point current IV are already mentioned. Substitute the values here, it will give you the lower limit of R. For example, here I have written lower limit is generally 3 kilo ohms. It can be less than or more than 3 kilo ohms, depends upon your circuit. So this is how you find upper limit and lower limit of R. Once you know upper limit and lower limit of R, so you can vary R between that lower and upper limit, and hence by varying R, you can generate the firing pulses. This is how to use UJT as a relaxation oscillator. And regarding this RB1, RB1 is generally of the order of 100 ohms or less, and RB2 is generally nearly greater than or equal to 100 ohms. RB1 is usually 100 ohms or less, RB2 is greater than 100 ohms, and there is a formula for calculating this RB2. It is approximately equal to 10 raised, sorry, let me verify it. It is approximately equal to 10 raised power 4 by eta Vs. You can find it from this formula also. And practically, commercially available UJTs are, they have the specifications like this: 2N2646. It is a commercially available UJT. Another commercially available UJT is 2N2647. If you go to market, you can search, you can ask the vendor to give the UJT whose serial number is this, another UJT whose serial number is this, and its value point voltage, peak point voltage of these UJTs is approximately 7 volts. Value point voltage is approximately 1.5 volt, or you can experimentally find it. So these are the specifications of commercially available UJTs in the market. Now let us use this UJT for the firing of thyristor in actual circuit. So we will now discuss line synchronized UJT relaxation oscillator. Line synchronized UJT relaxation oscillator. Relaxation oscillator or firing circuit. Line synchronized UJT firing circuit. Let us see how we can use line synchronized UJT relaxation oscillator as a firing circuit. To understand that, let me first of all show you the control of power or control of voltage through load using a thyristor and SCR. This is the load and this is the thyristor. Anode A, cathode K, and gate G. What is this? This is a rectifier. It converts AC into DC. So what type of DC supply you get here? Yes. Your AC is, this is source voltage AC. This is 0, pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and so on. This is source voltage. What will this rectifier do? This is omega t axis. This rectifier, let us call this voltage as VD. This voltage at the output of rectifier. This bridge rectifier converts AC into DC. So this is my VD. Pi, 2 pi. So this is rectified voltage. Now I want a controlled voltage across this load. Let us call this load voltage as V0. I want to control voltage across the load. For that purpose, I am using a thyristor. So let me show the waveform for load voltage V0. This is 0, this is pi, 2 pi, and so on. This load voltage can be like this. What I do is that, this is the voltage available. Let me take first positive half cycle, 0 to pi. I want a controlled voltage across the load. So what I will do, if I want less voltage across, if I want same voltage across the load, I will fire thyristor T. Let us call this thyristor as T, right at omega t equal to 0. So when I fire it at omega t equal to 0, the full voltage gets applied across the load. If I want less average voltage, DC voltage across the load, I delay the firing of SCR. For example, I fire SCR somewhere here. Let us suppose I fire SCR here, alpha. Alpha, yesterday I have already told you in last lecture, alpha is called firing angle or delay angle. It is the angle at which an SCR is fired, or it is the angle by which the firing of SCR is delayed. That's why it's called delay angle. Let us suppose firing pulse is given to SCR here. So therefore from 0 to alpha, what is the voltage across load? 0, because you have not fired SCR. Unless you fire the SCR, current will not flow and no voltage will appear across load. When SCR is in the off state, this entire voltage appears across the thyristor. No voltage appears across the load. It acts as an open switch. It blocks all the voltage. And voltage across load is 0. And when you fire the thyristor, it acts as a closed switch and it connects the load across the source, and then voltage appears across the load. So you are firing thyristor here. So when you are firing thyristor here from 0 to alpha, since thyristor is off, it blocks the voltage. So load voltage is 0. I have shaded it, load voltage is. At this point, after alpha electrical degrees, you are firing thyristor. When thyristor is fired, it goes into conduction and then current flows. Load receives the remaining segment of positive half cycle of voltage. This is the remaining segment of positive half cycle of voltage. So you are not applying the entire positive half cycle of voltage. 0 to alpha part, you are chopping, because from 0 to alpha, thyristor is off. When it is off, it acts as an open switch, it blocks the voltage. At alpha, you are firing the thyristor and it goes into conduction, and remaining segment of the positive half cycle of voltage gets applied across the load. Similarly, in the next half cycle also. In the next half cycle also, this is pi and this is pi plus alpha. From pi to pi plus alpha, you are not, because at omega t equal to pi, current is 0, thyristor is off. When current is 0, thyristor turns off. And then when next positive half cycle comes, from pi to pi plus alpha, you are not firing the thyristor. You need to fire the thyristor again when current through the thyristor is 0. You are delaying its firing by the same angle, pi to pi plus alpha. So from pi to pi plus alpha, voltage is 0. At pi plus alpha, you are issuing firing pulse to thyristor, it turns on, and remaining segment of the voltage appears across the load. Similarly, in the next half cycle. So therefore, what will happen to the average voltage? Average voltage will be somewhere here. This is the average voltage V0 across the load. If you want to decrease average voltage across the load, you increase the firing angle. For example, I can show that here. Again, this is 0, pi, 2 pi, and this is your source voltage. This is Vs, this is omega t axis. And this is your rectifier output voltage Vd here. This voltage Vd, it is full wave rectified voltage. Let me take 2 or 3 cycles, 3 half cycles. And this is pi, 0, pi, 2 pi, and this is my load voltage V naught. Now I am delaying the firing. Here alpha was around 40 degrees. Now let me make alpha equal to 100 degrees somewhere here. Let me fire SCR after a large delay angle alpha, which is nearly equal to 100, say 110 degrees. So from 0 to, your load voltage would have been like this if it was fired at omega. So from 0 to alpha, thyristor is off. So what is voltage across the load? Voltage across the load is 0. At alpha equal to 110 degrees, your control logic circuit is issuing firing pulse to thyristor. It turns on and load receives the remaining segment of the voltage. This is the remaining segment of the voltage. So this from 0 to alpha, no voltage is there across the load. You are chopping the voltage. And from alpha to pi, remaining segment of positive half cycle of voltage gets applied across the load. Same happens in the next half cycle. From pi to pi plus alpha, your thyristor is off. At pi plus alpha, you turn it on and remaining segment of voltage gets applied. So here large segments of voltage we are getting across the load. Here when you have increased the delay angle, less small segments of voltage are getting across the load. So average value of voltage V naught, you can say it decreases. This line, see here average value of voltage is high. Here average value of voltage. So therefore by controlling the firing delay angle, you can increase or decrease the average voltage across the load, and therefore the voltage control and power control is possible. This is how it is done. Let us see how we can use UJT relaxation oscillator as a firing circuit, line synchronized UJT firing circuit, for achieving this, for firing of thyristor. First of all, you have to understand what do you mean by line synchronized. Line synchronized means if this is your source voltage, and if I say alpha is say 40 degrees, so this is 0, this is pi, so here I say alpha is equal to 40 degrees. So the reference is this 0 crossing of source voltage. And when I say alpha is equal to 40 degrees, from 0 crossing of source voltage, you start measuring this alpha. So from here to here, it is 40 degrees. If I say alpha is 90 degrees, this is alpha equal to 90 degrees. You again start measuring it from 0 crossing. So therefore, if alpha is 40 degrees, you issue the firing pulse here. And if alpha is 90 degrees, you issue the firing pulse here. So that means occurrence of the firing pulses is synchronized with the 0 crossings of the source voltage. For example, here at alpha equal to 40 degrees, I issue the firing pulse after alpha equal to 40 degrees here. So how do you measure this occurrence of firing pulse is synchronized with the 0 crossing, because you measure alpha equal to 40 degrees from 0 crossing of the voltage. And when I say alpha is equal to 90 degrees, okay, this 90 degrees you are measuring from 0 crossing of the source voltage. So issuance of firing pulse or occurring of firing pulse is synchronized with the 0 crossing. So this is called line synchronization. Okay, line synchronization is very, very important. Otherwise, if line synchronization is not done, your firing pulses may occur randomly at any point of time, and you may not get symmetrical voltage waveform. The circuit diagram for line synchronized UJT firing circuit is like this. This is source voltage, Vs. This is positive bus, this is negative bus, and this is your DC bus voltage, Vd. Then you have a resistance Rd, you call this resistance Rd, it's a high resistance. Then you have a Zener diode here, Dz. Okay. Then you have variable resistance R, a charging circuit, RC charging circuit. This is capacitance C, voltage across capacitance is Vc, and this is your emitter, and this is your UJT. This is base terminal B2. This is base terminal B1. You have a resistance, external resistance RB1 here. You have external resistance RB2 here. Just like this. Okay. This is B1. Now, this is your load. And this is the thyristor that you want to trigger with anode A, cathode K, and gate G. This is the gate terminal. And firing pulses are across RB1, and voltage across RB1 is VG, and the firing pulses are in as a train of pulses like this. And the voltage across RB1 is applied between the gate and cathode terminal of SCR. So these voltage pulses act as firing pulses and they trigger the SCR. Now the load and SCR are connected actually across the output of your bridge rectifier, same way as a few moments back I have shown. The only thing is that I have not shown the firing circuit. Here I have included this firing circuit, and this firing circuit is basically UJT relaxation oscillator, line synchronized UJT relaxation oscillator. Now let us try to understand its working with the help of waveforms. First waveform is for source voltage Vs. This is your source voltage Vs. This is 0. These are the zero crossing 0, pi, 2 pi, and so on. Second waveform is for rectifier output voltage. This is a bridge rectifier, and it rectifies, converts AC into DC. Full wave rectification takes place. So this is rectifier output voltage, like this, and so on. This is rectifier output voltage, and I have called it VD. This is VD. Now this rectifier output voltage becomes input to your UJT relaxation oscillator. See, for example, if this rectifier output voltage is 200 volts, and you have a Zener diode 1Z15 here, you know, your UJT relaxation oscillator should have a DC source. So this DC source is provided by this Zener diode. What this Zener diode does, it clips the voltage. And you know what is the range of voltage to a UJT relaxation oscillator? 10 to 35 volts. Let us suppose that supply voltage, which is equal to same as Zener voltage, is 15 volts. So when you use this Zener diode, which is commercially available in the market, this is the serial number of Zener diode, which is available in the market. DZ means Zener diode, 1Z15. This 15 means it clips the voltage at 15 volts. This is your rectifier output voltage. What this Zener diode does, immediately, you know, as soon as voltage becomes 15 volts, it clips the voltage. You can see it clips the voltage in each half cycle. So this is your Zener voltage, VZ, which is same as Vs. That is what Zener diode, you know, Zener acts as a clipping circuit. First of all, what you do, you drop maximum voltage across this resistance, and suppose you have some 30 to 40 volts available here. Out of 30 to 40 volts, you clip the voltage at 15 volts. So you are clipping the voltage. So this is your Zener voltage. Zener acts as a clamping circuit or as a clipping circuit. So now we can see it's a DC line, and it becomes a DC source for your UJT. So this is the voltage across this is VZ, and it is around 15 volts. You can see 15 volts. And this voltage acts as a source, DC source for UJT relaxation oscillator. So what it will do, it will first charge the capacitor. So capacitor will start getting charged. As soon as capacitor voltage reaches peak point voltage, say this is peak point voltage, UJT fires. And when UJT fires, capacitor discharges through RB1. So it discharges, quickly discharges. And its voltage reaches valley point voltage. This is VV. And then it again charges and discharges. And then it continues in next half cycle. Charge, discharge, charge, discharge. Next half cycle, charge, discharge, and so on. So this is charging and discharge. The charging rate is decided by RC time constant. And the discharging rate is decided by RB1 into C, which will also decide the width of control pulse or firing pulse. So therefore, what is this voltage? This is VC, capacitor voltage. And then you will get firing pulses like this. You get first firing pulse you get when the capacitor first time discharges. I will write here VG. VG means firing pulse. This is the first firing pulse. Next firing pulse you get here. Next firing pulse you get here. So whenever capacitor discharges, it discharges through RB1, and this capacitor voltage appears across RB1 as a firing pulse. So you can see in each half cycle you get 2 firing pulses. Actually, we should have got only 1 firing pulse. 1 firing pulse in 1 half cycle is sufficient. But because of the nature of the circuit itself, you can get more than 1 firing pulse per half cycle. For example, here you get 2 firing pulses per half cycle. So therefore, what will be load voltage? V0. Let us call this voltage as V0, load voltage, and load current is I0. Load voltage I can show here. This is 0, this is pi. I will just take 2 half cycles. Now first firing pulse is issued here. This is the first firing pulse after a delay of alpha electrical degrees. So that means from 0 to alpha, load voltage is 0. And SCR is fired here after a delay of alpha electrical degrees. First time it goes into conduction, and remaining segment of voltage gets applied across load. Similarly, in the next half cycle, at pi plus alpha, SCR is fired, so that means from pi to pi plus alpha, load voltage is 0. From pi plus alpha to 2 pi, we get voltage pulse. So this is how you control the voltage across the load. Now if you want to increase the firing angle or delay angle, so that you want less average voltage across the load, what you have to do, you have to increase this R. When you increase this R, capacitor slowly charges. I can show that separately here. Capacitor slowly charges. So for example, this is your Zener voltage. Capacitor slowly charges. It charges very slowly. And you can see if this is your load voltage, where do you get first firing pulse? You get first firing pulse here after a delay, because you have increased the RC time, or you have increased, capacitor slowly charges, and it takes it more time to reach the peak point voltage. It reaches peak point voltage after alpha, which is nearly 110, 120 degrees. And then from 0 to alpha, load voltage is 0, and then remaining segment of load voltage, source voltage gets applied across the load. This is how you increase alpha. If you want to decrease alpha, you want more average output voltage across the load, you reduce R. When you reduce R, that also I can show here. This is Zener voltage. Zener voltage. When you reduce R, this capacitor quickly charges to peak point voltage. So this reaches peak point voltage very quickly, and then again. So therefore, what happens? Your load voltage 0 to pi. So you get firing pulse very quickly here after a delay of just few degrees. This may be alpha equal to 20 degrees. So from 0 to alpha, load voltage is 0, and then remaining segment of positive half cycle of source voltage appears across the load. So you get more voltage segment across the load. So therefore, by increasing R, RC time constant increases, delay angle increases, and average output voltage across the load decreases. And if you want more average output voltage across the load, more voltage segment should get applied across the load, so you have to decrease the delay angle. So how can you decrease delay angle? By reducing this R. By reducing R, RC charging time constant decreases, and capacitor quickly gets charged to peak point voltage, and it immediately issues the firing pulse. So therefore, alpha can be increased by increasing R, alpha can be decreased by decreasing R. So, and you can see the occurrence of firing pulses is synchronized with the zero crossing of source voltages. When I say here, so for example, alpha is 60 degrees, it is synchronized with zero crossing. You have to measure 60 degrees right from zero crossing. So this explains the operation of line synchronized UJT relaxation oscillator as a firing circuit for firing of thyristor. So summarizing what we have learned in today's lecture, first of all, I tried to actually, we were discussing gate pulse triggering. I told you gate pulse triggering is the best method of firing an SCR. Why it is best method of firing an SCR? because you are issuing short duration firing pulses. Firing pulse is there, SCR is triggered, and then firing pulse is gone. In AC and DC gate triggering, there is continuous flow of gate current even after the triggering of SCR, and that increases the gate power losses. Instead of continuous gate current, you should have a short duration gate current pulse. That is what is achieved in gate pulse triggering, and it's an efficient way of triggering an SCR. So in gate pulse triggering, how to generate the firing pulses, there are many methods. I have shown you one method, and the method is using UJT as a firing circuit. In order to understand how to use UJT as a firing circuit, you have to first understand the operation, the structure of UJT and its operation. So we started with understanding the layer diagram of UJT, why it is called UJT, its internal structure, its operation, principle of operation, and its VI characteristics, static emitter characteristics. Once we have understood operation and characteristics of UJT, then I discussed with you how to use this UJT as a relaxation oscillator for generation of sharp pulses. And then in the end, I discussed with you how we can use this UJT as a line synchronized relaxation oscillator as a firing circuit for SCR. So with this, I will end my today's lecture. So I again advise you to go through the lecture, and if there are any doubts, you put your queries. I will be happy, I will be pleased to answer your queries. Thank you.